All right, I need to hit that record button. So we are getting set up for an amazing presentation today on a subject that comes like highly requested. And we've had a number of you all who are, have stated that you're very interested in EMDR and just learning more about that. And so we've had Juliet on before, and that was one of the largest trainings that we had. And so we definitely wanted to bring her back because of the interest. And since then, she has come along a bit further into her expertise and experience and has tons of things to share with us. So we're excited to have everybody. And I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody who has been supporting us through social media, is being a part of Social Workers of Alabama. Those of you all who have been participating in our trainings, those of y'all who show up to these continuing ed, it really gives us a drive to continue what we're doing as we are just trying to get social work stuff out. All right. So I'm going to go on and get started with our bio because I don't want to take up any more time. Housekeeping, we definitely try to get these out, the continuing education units prior to the end of the week. Sometimes we're able to do that a day later. Sometimes it's a couple days. Sometimes it's not until Friday. But we're constantly developing systems, and the more hands we have, any volunteers, it's a free event. So volunteer, we it's hard to pay for it for the help. But any volunteers anytime, we definitely like that, and we can get them out a little bit faster. But we want to make sure that you all get everything to your inbox and properly, efficiently, and on time. And so and y'all have been great. Nobody has jumped down our throats, anything, and complained. Uh, I think we do a pretty good job, but we're not always perfect. And then you all keep coming, so that's really exciting. But let me stop talking here and start talking about this bio here. By the way, this is my I, I'm like kind of like her little big brother, you know what I'm saying? Because she's a bit taller than me, and I'm challenged there. But yeah, but let me get to the bio. So I'm excited always, my sister, because let me tell y'all, she is an awesome therapist. Like we'll both say, we have plenty of data to make us good from our experiences. So so she's really good, and I've learned a lot from her. But let's go to get into it because this is not enough time to cover this subject. And so we just let you know ahead of time, but it's going to be great. So Juliet Wise is a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Alabama and is trained in eye movement desensitization, and processing. EMDR is what it is, therapy, and cognitive processing therapy, CPT. She specializes in trauma and she began her private practice, Journey to New Beginnings Counseling Services, LLC, in 2017. She provides clinical therapeutic services to women 18 and over in the following areas of women's issues. I don't know why we both just want to do women. Have to process that on me one day, right? Uh, she provides clinical therapy services to women 18 and over in the following areas of women's issues: depression, anxiety, stress management, and life transitions, sexual assault, trauma, and intimacy issues. We both love trauma. Anyway, she has a passion for empowering individuals to challenge the person looking at them in the mirror. Recognize that person can be your greatest enemy or ally. To be authentic and transparent with that person and to learn to live and love that person and embrace the world as your oasis. Without further ado, we're going to jump on into the training. Juliet, I'll let you explain the title. I don't want to take any more time, and we're going to do it. Thank you all for coming. And thanks for presenting, Juliet.
Thank you, Toya.
With
Thank you for
Juliet,
the
because I want to call you something else. Stick with Juliet.
All right, right. You had to say it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Thank you for the amazing introduction. I am excited to be here. Like my brother said, I am his little big sister. He is my mentor, teaches me a lot of the things that I need to know kind of paves the way so that I can walk through. And that's always a good thing in the space. I know a lot of people, we have our cameras off because we are moving. Thank you, Janice. I can see you. I like to talk to people. I'm very interactive. But we are moving constantly as social workers and therapists. So oftentimes we do have our cameras off. But if you are able to turn your camera on and interact a little bit in this I said in this therapy session, in this training, that would be absolutely amazing. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Troy. That would be absolutely amazing. So, to tell you all a little bit, Troy already gave you a good synopsis of who I am. I want to tell you why I am passionate about attachment focused EMDR. I will start off talking a little bit and then I'm going to pull up my presentation because I'm not sure if I've learned how to balance yet my Canva presentation with looking at the screen. So I'm just trying to make sure I get it all in. But my passion behind attachment focused EMDR, as I've been growing in the space of EMDR, has a lot to do with the assessment of my clients. But before I go into that, if you're able to just put your hand on the screen, how many people have been trained in EMDR? Okay, Autumn, you have. Okay. And okay, Leanne, you've been trained too. Okay. And so some people have been trained in EMDR, some people have not. How many people are familiar, Judy, I see you too, with EMDR? Okay, thank y'all. And so the reason I want to ask this is because I'm going to go through a brief description of EMDR, but I'm not going to go into detail about the phases, how the phases are done, the different protocols, or anything like that, because the primary focus of the training today is to talk about the importance of assessing our clients in the space of attachment and EMDR. Okay. So before I bring up the screen, I'm gonna test it out. Hopefully I can still see y'all while my screen is on, okay? But before I bring up the screen, my passion behind working with my clients through attachment focused EMDR is because when I started EMDR, I started realizing that I was so focused on the protocol that I was getting nervous about how I was implementing the therapeutic services. And so sometimes we can get so focused on the protocol because the protocol is very serious and we want to make sure that we're implementing EMDR in a way that the way that it's taught so that we can have the effective results that have been researched. However, yes, you could get so serious about the protocol that sometimes your brain can be stuck in the protocol and you get lost in the space of the client. So it took me a little while to adjust to that. One thing that I found as I started finding more presence with my clients is with me being a therapist that works primarily with individuals who have a history of sexual trauma and intimacy issues. Of course, I see other people that deal with, depression and the range of things in the space of women's issues, but solely women. I started realizing the complexity of the trauma that the women I work with deal with is not a single type of protocol experience situation, right? And oftentimes people who have experienced trauma also have relational trauma. And so if I'm just trying to go directly into protocol, then I'm not, it's often, it can be very often that I miss the mark because I have not identified their relationship, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and bring up my screen so I won't jump ahead of myself in the presentation because I felt that about to happen. And I want you all to, hold on, let me stop for a minute. When I get this up, can you guys let me know if you are able to see the slides? Now, it may look a little different next time I present. I will be better at this. Let me see. So we're gonna go to the window. All right, can you tell me if you all can see that on your screen?
Yes,
Good.
I can see it.
Oh, praise God. Thank you. So I want you all to be able to see it and be seated at the same time. I'm learning. Canva is an amazing tool, but I'm learning how to do everything in there. I'm excited about it, but getting going, right? So the power of the mind and body. The body and mind have a natural processing system that works to process and integrate information. The language of our body knows how to heal the same way a wound may heal physically. The healing process is often disrupted by a lack of support, your age, chaotic environments, and many other things that disrupt our natural ability to process and integrate new information, right? So when we understand the mind and body in this way, we recognize that the mind has the same capacity as the body does to heal, right? And it could heal on its own. However, because we have so many chaotic things, especially in the space of trauma, that happen, it disrupts our ability to do what it's naturally supposed to do, right? And so that's where we come in as therapists. I think I had that slide already. Let me see if I go for EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, a trauma-informed therapy model with the goal of helping our clients heal from trauma and or other distressing life experiences. EMDR is guided by the adaptive information processing model, which proposes that trauma is stored and stuck in neural networks. Ultimately, what that means is, because I know it's a lot of wording, I'm going through the right, but ultimately what that means is things happen to us. And when we experience trauma, it gets stuck in our brain. And oftentimes when it gets stuck in that place, we get stuck. If when we're talking about relational trauma, we get stuck in that developmental stage, right? So let's say something very traumatic. I'll use sexual trauma because that's my niche, right? So you experience sexual trauma at the age of, let's say, 8 years old. It wasn't ravaging, but it definitely disrupted your intimate space, right? So then you became confused about physical touch because you were touched by somebody you trusted, which was a caregiver, but then you also knew it was wrong. So then from now on, when somebody touches your body, your somatic or physical response is confused and nauseous or dizzy because I have to be a bad person when I experience that touch because I experienced it when I was younger, right? I don't know if I explained that well. And so in the space of that, that messaging develops at 7 years old of I am bad, right? And so as you're developing relationships and you're growing, ultimately you don't really have any form of security in the space of your development of relationships. Because back then when I experienced this sexual trauma that had intimate feelings and touches that did not feel bad, but I knew it was bad because this person 30, 40 years older than me is touching me. And it's disrupted my whole body process of development, right? And so now I've got this messaging of I'm a bad person when I'm trying to connect intimately in my intimate, we're talking about here, physically romantic sexual relationships with my partner. Make sense? So that is the understanding of adaptive information processing. Let me give a trigger warning. I talk a lot about sexual trauma and intimacy issues because that is my area of specialty. Okay. And so I'm sorry I did not give that trigger warning earlier, but that is where a lot of my scenarios may relate. Okay. So moving forward, wait, went the wrong way. Hold on. I'm getting the hang of this, y'all. All right. So we talked about adaptive information processing. I like that picture. Do y'all like that? That is really a really good representation of EMDR, right? Because when we're disassociating, our mind can just go ahead and float away, right? And we have in the front, we look so beautiful and like everything is okay, but out here, everything is behind the head, right? Okay, so then moving forward, EMDR, I gave you the example already. This one was I am responsible for everything. And so, I gave an example, so I'm not going to go too much into another example because I want to move forward. EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy again. The goal of EMDR therapy is to add adaptive emotions to the neural network through bilateral stimulation. I read a lot of Laura Parnell's books. I love Laura Parnell. Because she talks, I feel like she speaks my language. In her desire to attach. She does a lot of bilateral stimulation in the space of tapping. One area of tapping that I have found for my clients is very effective is the butterfly hug. Reason the butterfly hug is a tap is, what am I trying to say? Good for some people because it feels like a form of connection, right? And so you're tapping in the space of that. Bilateral stimulation is a process that creates new neural pathways and the ability to access stored trauma. This allows reprocessing of trauma and reduction of associated anxiety, which then creates new associations, memories, and increases adaptive behavior. Bottom line of what it's saying is, we talked about that memory, I am bad, right? In bilateral stimulation, we talk about how that bad, I am bad messaging has come with you, has been with you in the past. We identify things where it's happened to you in the past. Then we talk about how it shows up in the present. And then we see how it can show up in the future, right? So those are the three prongs. In that space, then we think about, okay, so we talk about all of these things and we say, okay, the negative cognition is I am bad. What would you like to feel? What would you like to feel about yourself? What would you like to believe? And so then you may identify what would be a positive cognition if the messaging was I am bad. Anybody have any suggestions? I'm bad would be another end of that. I am okay as I am, right? Thank you, Autumn. So when we think of the messaging of I am bad, and then you think of the message of I am okay as I am, even in that moment as I read that, I felt that relaxation in my body going from I am bad to I am okay as I am. So what we do in that bilateral stimulation is we take that negative messaging, we use bilateral stimulation to work through the negative cognition, go through the process of desensitization. And I'm really cycling it all up into a lot, but then we basically bring down the power of that activation. And then we go ahead, allow that reprocessing to happen, create those new associations like these neurons here, and put that messaging back in of I'm okay, install that messaging of I'm okay as I am. We're going to move forward because the importance of this is us understanding our roles as therapists in the space of EMDR. I'm going to drink a cup of tea so I can ground myself. Sometimes I have to remember to slow down so that you're able to not just get the message in what I'm speaking, but also in my body language. That's a huge part of attachment focused EMDR. Attachment focused EMDR approaches trauma treatment from a relational trauma angle. Relational trauma is attachment trauma, right? It's trauma that occurs within the context of a relationship. So that means a relationship with a parent, a caregiver, a lover, a spouse, a partner, your friends, siblings, and other close loved ones. So when we think about relational trauma and it being able to happen in that context, can we imagine how many people have experienced some form of relational trauma? Right? That's a lot of people. Then we think about the history of relational trauma. Relational trauma was developed as they started developing the framework for relational trauma. It was more so related to children, but then there's relational trauma with children, and then there's adult relational trauma. But when we really think about it, as I think of my frameworks and we think about relational trauma, I think of it all being one because our inner child is present with our adult child. So then, therefore, our disruption, whatever disruption that we experience from someone else, would still be a form of relational trauma according to how our body, our mind, and our soul experience that person's interaction with us, right? And so that goes more into parts work, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with you on because I'm not experienced as much in parts work and I'm growing in that area. But I would encourage you to get trainings on parts work. Because when you're working on the parts of the person, you're helping them to identify the resources for their child self, their adult self, and the different parts that make us one, right? So going to the next slide. Relational trauma symptoms. A lot of symptoms for relational trauma show up in the following ways. A lot of internal struggle related to each meaningful relationship in their lives. So, internal struggle meaning in every relationship, let me see. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure I admit the people that are in here. But in every relationship, I am constantly wondering about it. I'm wondering if I can trust the relationship. Does this person actually like me? Do they see me? Do they really enjoy me being around? And it's a constant narrative going in your head, right? So it's that internal struggle that makes it hard for the person dealing with relational trauma to actually connect to another person or to trust the connection that's developing. Constant questioning regarding the intention of other people. Again, the example I gave. Trouble committing to new relationships and trusting new partners. So that means, can you see how that could add to someone staying in relationships for a long period of time, right? They may stay in relationships that may not be functional, that may not be good for them, but because they're afraid of attaching or connecting to anyone else, they'll stay in that relationship. They'll stay in those maladaptive or unhealthy toxic relationships because they're afraid of committing to a new relationship and then trying it all again. And then also in those relationships, because they don't truly understand attachment, the way they are experiencing that relationship is probably can be very different from what is actually happening. Okay. Avoidance of close relationships. This shows up in freeze responses or walking away. They might start getting close to somebody and really enjoying it, and then they go away. I know one thing that I had dealt with when I was younger is when I started liking someone and I got excited about it, for some reason, I don't know, automatic feeling just came up. I don't like them anymore. I don't want to be around them. As I've studied as a therapist, I understand that it was fear, right? It's an unfamiliar feeling of someone seeing you and attaching to you. And I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. I'm a sex trauma therapist and also a sex trauma survivor. And so, in my traumatic experiences, I developed a number of things, not just from sexual trauma, emotional trauma, neglect, relational trauma, right? And so, in those things, I have understood what I needed, what I need, and try to show up in that way for my clients, right? Next thing, thoughts of I am not good enough for anyone. Can y'all imagine that, right? If this person feels like I'm not good enough for anyone, we want to think about how that can show up in the therapeutic relationship. And we'll get to that. So if they feel like I'm not good enough for anyone, then it doesn't matter who's in front of them. Because that relationship has been, however, it was disrupted. And oftentimes, and let me go back a little bit too, because I don't think I said with relational and attachment trauma, is that experience they had experience was ongoing, right? And so when an experience is ongoing of neglect or disruption or lack of connection or pushing you away, like let's say there's a child and a mother, and the child is little and they just want to be hugged. But every time they come to get hugged, the parent pushes them away and says, "Get off of me, don't touch me," right? That child starts learning that it must be something wrong with desiring a hug. And so over time, they may develop this adverse feeling to touch and hugs because they learn this is bad. But that might have happened at one or two and they have no language related to it. But at their adult age, in their adult body, when someone's hugging them, they feel like something is wrong with that or I'll be rejected. The body tells them that, right? Going forward, current unhealthy relationships with parents and caregivers is often what they experience. The next thing, attachment focused EMDR focuses on 5 principles: fostering client safety, developing and nurturing the therapeutic relationship to facilitate healing, using client centered approach, creating reparative neural networks through the use of resource tapping, and using modified EMDR whenever the client's needs indicated, right? And so when we're talking about, let me see, just one second. When we're talking about the space of attachment focused EMDR, I want to focus first on fostering client safety. I'm not going to go into all of those because these are the ones that stand out most for me that I think are important to share with other therapists and social workers. Fostering client, let me see. Fostering client safety explicitly are the ways that we create safety. Ways to create safety are assessing for the appropriateness for EMDR. Everybody is not appropriate for EMDR, right? And so you want to be able to understand if they have if they're able to regulate their emotions in a way that allows them to be safe with experiencing maybe high levels of emotions, right? You want to be able to understand where they are in their therapeutic process. Are they highly dissociative? Does that mean that they can't do EMDR therapy? It doesn't necessarily mean that. It means though that they may need some more resourcing, and we have to be able to assess how to show up in that space of resourcing. What type of medication are they taking? Are their doctors approved? Do they have any physical illnesses that would prevent them from being able to show up in the EMDR space or that would impact them? Do they have any eye problems, right? Because some people use the eye movement desensitization. I do some of the eye movement desensitization, but I do more tapping, right? So you want to understand the emotional fragility. Are they currently prepared for the intensity of the EMDR word? Tapping in resources. The large resources that I like to use, and I'm going to go on the next page and talk about that. Oh, what did Judy Rudy say? Yes, dizziness by patient. And you're talking about, Judy, are you talking about dizziness from the eye movement? Oh. But you're right. If they experience any form of vertigo, that could be a challenging space for them in the space of EMDR. I often have my clients speak to their doctors to ensure that especially if we're sitting and we're in the session and I find, oh, no dizziness, I think caused by anxiety. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. And so you want to have them talk to their medical professional or their primary care physician to see if they are appropriate for EMDR and that they get that approval before you begin that process. Sometimes our clients will be really excited because they want to get through it, you know what I mean? And they want to work through it. You also want to assess for them your level. You want to be able to be comfortable in the way you provide EMDR, right? Some clients will come in because they are like, I read that you can get this done in this quick amount of time, and I want to get it done at that period of time. Sometimes you can move quickly, but sometimes you don't. And it's according to how you practice and what that looks like for you in your space and what their needs may be. So it's very important for you to be secure in the space of how you provide EMDR. So then in that way, you can show up in the best way for your client, right? And being able to let them know sometimes it's okay not to move fast because we want you to be safe in the process. All right. So then the next space, resource development. Um, what resource development does is it gets a picture of the client's inner capacity, resilience, areas of strengths, and areas of need. For me, when I'm working with my clients, I spend a lot of time resourcing. What I have found with my clientele is that when you have had a history of a lot of trauma, sometimes there is so much fear related to even identifying anything associated with the sexual trauma that you experience, right? And so I'll spend a lot of time with my clients helping them to develop safe place because when you develop safe place, you're able to identify where you can go. But sometimes my clients cannot identify with safe. So I'll say, okay, if safe doesn't feel good to you, that's okay. Would you like to identify with another word? What about peaceful? Right? And so then they'll say, I like peaceful better because I've never felt safe anywhere. Right. And so it can make it very difficult for them to access that space. This goes back to we want to make sure that we're assessing and we're present with each of our clients so that we can assess their body language and we're attuned with their body language. If they are saying with their body, but not with their mouth, that safe place is not something they can do. Oftentimes, when our clients have experienced trauma, they don't have the language to communicate their needs. right? Or they've become afraid of communicating their needs because they're afraid that if I communicate my needs, you won't approve of me, or I will get in trouble, or I'll be doing it wrong. So our job as a therapist, even if you're not doing EMDR, is to be fully present with your body and your mind so that you can be attuned to what your client is needing beyond what they're saying from their mouths, right? Because more is said with the body and the body language than the words that are coming from the mouth, right? The more resources the client has, the more safe and secure they feel. Sometimes I'll have my clients develop safe plays, right? And so then they'll develop their safe place, and then after they develop their safe place, and they're realizing that they can get into that, because sometimes people can't get to their safe place because we use safe. So then I'll say, okay, let's go to peaceful. That may take a whole session because they're trying and they have not been able to, or I haven't been fully present to say, I don't think this is working for you, right? So then we'll go into peaceful place, and then we'll get to peaceful place, and they'll realize, oh my gosh, I can see myself on the beach. I can feel the sand. I can feel the sun on my arms. I can hear the waves crashing. And so now they are fully in that space. And once they're fully in that space, we're able to tap it in. Well, I continue to build on that resource when we start having conversation, and I kind of mix my historical assessment in there with my resourcing. And as we're talking and we're developing the targets, they'll say, well, Ms. Wise, I don't really want to talk about that. That's too much. So then I'll say, well, what do you need to talk about that a little bit more? Well, I don't know. I just need to feel like I'm not afraid. Okay. I need to feel like I am not going to get in trouble. Well, what would help you to feel like you weren't going to get in trouble? Well, I don't know. Sometimes when I'm with my husband, he's comforting. And so I feel more comfortable when he's around. Well, what about him makes you feel comfortable? He's secure, he's safe, he doesn't judge me, right? So then I'll say, okay, so is that a person that represents security to you? And they'll be like, yeah. I'll say, okay, well, is he okay to come into that space of security or that feeling of security that you find in the space of him? Do we want to tap in that feeling of security? They may say yes. And I say, okay, well, where do you feel that? And they may say, I feel it in my chest. I feel it here. Well, let's get like 5 taps. Let's do like 6 taps. We're not going to do too much because we don't want to activate, but let's tap in that space of security, right? So then we'll tap in that space of security. So now not only do we have our peaceful place, but now our body also has a sense of security, right? So now we're building up that network, and then we'll say, okay, well, I'm still here at this session and I still don't feel comfortable with this space. Well, then I have to ask questions like, do you feel uncomfortable with me? Am I making you feel uncomfortable? Are you uncomfortable with the space? Tell me what makes you feel most uncomfortable. I'm not really able to articulate it. Have you ever felt this feeling of discomfort before? Yeah, I felt it before. Well, when did you feel it? I felt it at this time. Okay. So then what would you have needed during that time? Well, I needed my grandmother because my grandmother always made me feel good. She could sit next to me and I would feel like everything was okay. She would tell me everything was going to be good. She would rub my arms. She would do these things. I would be, oh, okay. So did that make you feel comforted? Did you like being held by her? Did you feel nurtured? I say, yeah. Do you want to tap her into this space too? Yeah, let's tap her in. So then we put all of those people in that space. And so now we're building up this resource for this client to feel a sense of security in their bodies when they're talking about challenging memories. Does that make sense? And so we're dealing with the relational spaces that they've dealt with so that we can make sure that they're okay to process these memories. Okay. So then the next thing it says, what did I miss? Resourcing allows the client to stay present in the current therapeutic relationship and additional relationships. Right. What I put out here is slow down to speed up. That's what I try to live in a space of. Slow down in the space of resourcing so that I can make sure that they are okay, even if they want to rush. But if I realize that they are, oftentimes you may have a client that wants to rush, but they're not very present, right? And so if they wanting to go super fast, but they don't realize their disassociation is so far away from the space that we'll get to processing and we'll find a block because you're not fully here. I do an activity that I learned in my consultation from my consultant, and she says she hasn't do this back of the head activity. So she hasn't put one hand in front of them and said, "Are you in the room? Tell me if you're in the room. If you're right here, you're in the room. If you put your hand right here, you're kind of partially out. If you're here, we're gone. We're not here. We're not here. We've left the room. I'm not present with you. It's okay, but we're not here." Right? And so then when you help them to understand that, they can say to you, "Miss Wise, Miss Autumn, Janice, I'm here, or I'm not here anymore." And so then in that space, I can say to them, what do you need for me to bring you back to this space? What could help you to come back here in this space? I don't know, because my body doesn't feel like it wants to do it. I don't know, because my body I don't know. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Okay, well, what would you like to do in this space? What would make you feel better? So that's resourcing. Okay. I could go on with resourcing forever, because resourcing for me is so important for the clients. Because then once we go to those next phases, those go a lot easier. I don't want to use the word easier, but they go a lot smoother when we've done the resourcing, because that fear is not there. The emotions may be there, but the fear is not there. So then we talk about commonly used. I just talk about these: safe or peaceful place, nurturing figures, and protective figures. These are the top ones here: safe or peaceful place, nurturing figures, and protective figures. Usually when you install those, then you can little by little install other ones, right? Based on what you're learning in your experiences with that client, right? Protective figures are huge. When I have the clients developing their safe spaces, I remind them, when they feel like, we might be tapping into space and they may be there and they'll be like, "But something ran past, something just scared me." Well, did it disrupt you? What do you need to put in that space so that no longer scares you? Is this space still safe for you with that running past you? Do you want to erect a large fence? What do you want to make it of? Do you want to make it of water? What do you want to create in your mind? Allow your mind to have permission to create whatever you want in this space. I tell them about how I love Marvel movies and I love Disney. Your safe place does not have to be anything realistic. It could be any and everything you want it to be, as long as it makes you feel peaceful. If your safe space is the water, what does the water feel like? Does it feel secure? Does it hold you? Does it keep you? Does it feel powerful? Whatever it is, allowing them to identify all of their senses that come in the space of that safe place, because that allows them, when they implement that bilateral stimulation, to imprint it in their spaces and helps their body to remember. So again, for chronically traumatized clients, it may be helpful to tap in resources before beginning EMDR each time. This creates a safety net that helps them to feel more contained. Tapping in these resources creates a foundation of safety and stabilization for the therapeutic work. Oftentimes, too, as you're getting your clients accustomed to being in the space that have dealt with trauma, you have to kind of get them grounded each time they come to the session, as they're learning how not to disassociate each time they leave. So I have clients that will come in and we'll work together in that space and they'll do their work, but they learn how to shut it off literally as soon as they hit the door, right? Because it feels too overwhelming to experience those emotions when they're gone. So when we're teaching them the safe places and we're teaching them the resources, we're helping them to identify how to be able to process a little bit about what we've talked about, at least to be able to identify how to go into your safe place or your peaceful place, to grow that space within you. And let me not say process, not necessarily process the traumatic work we've done, but build those resourcing spaces to understand, to teach them that they can do this and they can carry that safe space with them when they're leaving, right? So let me see, next slide. Can all of these pictures on here represent security, contentment, or peace? Right? Sometimes people's space of peace is their bed, right? Because in that bed, they can finally relax their bodies. Some people's peace is not their bed, right? Sometimes their bed is the worst place for them, you know? And then sometimes the water is a peaceful place. I love the water. I created my safe place. I had all kind of Marvel water beings. Not like that movie though. I did not like being under the water. That whole movie, that Marvel movie. I don't know what the name of that one is that just passed, but I felt like I was suffocating. It's like what, and I know I wasn't in the movie, but I pay attention to a lot of my body. So like, why are we under the water the whole movie? I did not like that, but I do like water, right? So paying attention to these, can all of these represent security, contentment, or peace, right? It's being able to identify those, and sometimes our stillness in looking at the picture allows us, because oftentimes our minds are continuously going, especially as therapists and helpers and healers. We're constantly going, trying to figure out more solutions and how we're going to do it. But do we actually sit down and look at the pictures and pay attention to, what would it feel like to be on that beach? I wonder if I could see how far away they are on that mountain. I wonder what it sounds like when those oars are rowing in that boat, right? Or when we talk about the safe lines on the safe space, the black and white, how does it feel, the simplicity of the picture? All of those are mindful. The reason why this is important for us as therapists is oftentimes we are not taking the time we need to pay attention to who we are and where we are in our vulnerabilities. If we don't understand our vulnerabilities, it will make it difficult for us to create safety for our clients, right? And so that's where it goes to the implicit ways to create safety. We have to be able to talk to our clients about any fears or concerns they have before beginning EMDR processing, right? And so, in talking to them about those fears, we've got to be able to be comfortable with whatever they say, you know? And so, what are some of the things, and I know that this is not as interactive, but are there any things that you can think of that would make you uncomfortable um, when that a client expressed related to their fears, right? And you may not. I'm not asking you to necessarily write it here. If you want to, that's fine, right? But when you talk to them about their fears, we have to be present enough to understand how our bodies can respond to their fears. Because if you're thinking about attachment and relational issues, our clients are constantly assessing us too. They're assessing through their bodies, even if they don't know it, if they feel safe in the space of us, right? And so if you say something that I was trying to think of something that someone could say that kind of disrupts me or makes me feel uncomfortable, then it could be extremely challenging for me if I'm not able to be present with it. I'm sorry, for the client if I'm not able to be present to that. So we have to be attuned to our clients non-verbally. But in order, like I said, to be attuned to our clients non-verbally, we have to be attuned to ourselves. And oftentimes we're not realizing how attuned we're not because we have been in the space of the expert, right? And so, in being the expert, yes, we are the experts regarding our knowledge base, right? But are we experts in our body? Have we dealt with our attachment issues? Are we present with the things that we deal with in regards to attachment? If we're not present with the things that we deal with attachment within the space of attachment, are we do we recognize how this will show up in the space of our clients and how it can impact their therapeutic process? Does it mean that we cannot show up because we're still growing? No, because we're humans too. So we're constantly growing, we're constantly evolving, we're constantly healing and different things. However, the wisdom and insecurity, which is going to come on another slide, the wisdom and insecurity is what allows us to be the best at what we do. When we're able to say, okay, this is a challenge for me. Assess comfortability with strong affect, thoughts, and feelings. Assessing comfortability with strong affect, thoughts, and feelings the client expresses. Remember to release control and judgment. When a client feels any form of control or judgment from us, it can take them right back into those spaces of shame. right back into the messaging that is shown up in the spaces of whatever their trauma looks like. And so it's us being careful not to judge ourselves, because we can take ourselves into the space of shame, but it's having wisdom to say, this makes me feel uncomfortable. When this client talks about this, it makes me feel uncomfortable, right? And so then when I'm able to be present with that, if you pay attention to your body automatically relaxes a little bit, because you've acknowledged that this makes me feel uncomfortable. And you're able to ask yourself some questions about what about it makes me uncomfortable. The question we want to ask ourselves is, do we take the time to assess when we are uncomfortable, or do we just keep moving? Like, do we feel it? Because you know how you can feel something, you're like, oh, but then we kind of keep going. Do we let ourselves sit for a moment, even if it's in the session, to identify what about it makes me feel uncomfortable? Should I mention this to the client, or what should I do with it? Am I comfortable with touch? Right? Sometimes our clients can be so overwhelmed in their processing, and they may just need us to reach out. Of course, us asking, are you comfortable with me doing your tapping for you? Are you comfortable with me tapping on your knees for you? And us saying, what about me? How do I feel about touching them? Right? Does it make me feel uncomfortable to touch my client? I had to assess that for myself when I was learning this form of attachment focused treatment. I realized I do have some discomfort with touch and connection. And so, in that, when I allow myself to identify that, I'm able to ask myself, what messaging shows up for me, and how can it impact you showing up? So then that's the work that it goes into the space of us as therapists continuing to be intentional about doing our work, because we're humans and we're going to be evolving till the day we die. And as long as we believe that we have evolved, we have failed. That's my belief, right? If I'm in a space where I have evolved and that is it, well, we have a problem, Houston. Right? And so we want to understand that we are constantly evolving as people, and that's what makes us so amazing. Therapist characteristics. I thought I would bring a child so we can remember our inner child, right? So, as therapists, our ability to listen to our clients, listen to them, not just with what they're saying, but with what they're doing in their body. Sometimes we can see them, we've been taught this language of resistance when they don't come to a session, or they don't want to be a part of a conversation, right? And so we've been taught that they're resisting, but what we don't realize is when we have this thought process, regardless of if we communicate it with our words and we communicate it in our mind, we show up in a way that we're treating them through our body language as if they are resisting. So then when we think about it, when we say, okay, well, in a space where I think they're resisting, if I ask them, what's happening right now with you? I'm seeing there's some challenges. What's happening there? And then they're able to communicate to us, well, that was hard to talk about. Or they might just say, I don't know. And so those of us who have dealt with feelings, we might start feeling in our head like, see, they're resistant. So our body language becomes strong and we start sitting up more, and we don't realize it and say, okay, I hear you that you don't know. I know we've been trying to talk about some hard things. Is it getting overwhelming for you? You know? So then they may say, yeah, it's getting overwhelming. What do you think? Right. And so that anger is still coming. But then when we realize that anger is still coming, we're realizing that anger is hurt. What hurts most about this conversation? You may not have the words for it, but what's hurting? Talking about it, period. What do you need in this moment? I just need to be still. All right, let's be still then, right? A big part of what I teach in my space, especially dealing with women who have a history of sexual trauma, is permission to say, I'm ready to stop. Permission to not feel like doing it. Permission to get angry. Permission to be sad. Permission to not want to do anything. Permission to want to stop the therapy session. Permission to not know. Permission to not have words. And so then as our clients are learning that they have permission to be in all of these spaces, that is a form of resourcing in and of itself, because it calms the body in saying, oh, wow, I don't have to figure it out right now. I don't have to have an answer right now. So our ability to be present in that moment and our ability to just say, okay, I'm seeing a discomfort here, and it may not be resistance. I don't think it's resistance at all, but it's something. So, how do I be present enough to work through it? To sense our own body's experience when we're getting frustrated, because we are humans, right? And so, when we're getting frustrated or when we're getting uncomfortable, or for me, if someone comes and tells me something that's hurtful related to the type of sexual abuse they experience, and I'm sure whatever you all deal with, some things can just be, a lot of things are hurtful, but some things are just like, wow, that sucks, right? And being able to be in the space of saying, wow, that had to be bad. And sometimes it's thank you for allowing me to be in this space with you. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of you expressing your hurt. Because what often is happening with relational trauma is we hold such a large role as therapists of teaching them how to recreate, and I want to give you the right term, but how to recreate those emotional spaces and recreate their relational spaces. I'm sorry, I meant to write down the name of the word, but I can't think of it right now. So as their therapists, we have the opportunity to recreate that for them by how we respond to them, how we give them permission, how we talk to them, how we empathize with them, how we nurture them. And so without knowing it, we're teaching them how to repair those relational issues, because we're teaching them that it's okay to not want to talk. I'm not going to abandon you because you're angry this session. I'm not going to abandon you because you don't feel like dealing. It's called the corrective emotional experience. That's what I was looking for, right? And so what we're doing is giving them a corrective emotional experience in the way that we communicate, not just through our words. Honestly, if I was able to give a pie, I believe that 20% is our words. When we think about our bodies, how we respond with our bodies, how we respond with how we listen, our body language, how we nod, all of those speaks a greater level of language to them, oftentimes than our words. So, ability to attune to respond nonverbal communication, ability to be intimate, authentic, and real. Let me see. Want to make sure I didn't miss anything that I was supposed to tell you guys on that side. Oh, that's one thing I wanted to mention. I went back one. When our clients are communicating with us, if they tell us that they fear something, ask them, and I may have said this, what they need to feel safe, right? Acknowledge for them that their fear is okay, and ask them what they need to feel
Hello.
safe. Kate, were you gonna say something? Okay. So we're getting to closer to our end. Um, Let me see. So we talked about therapist characteristics, and now we are at the nearing our end, and it's talking about here our ability. Sorry, guys, I keep skipping over my slide. As therapists, our ability to love and feel compassion while maintaining boundaries, appropriate boundaries, is important. But we want to be able to acknowledge for ourselves the things that we've experienced, right? So sometimes for us, it can be hard to reach out and touch. Laura Parnell talks about this. We've been taught these different protocols through our schooling and all these different things about how we should have our boundaries. Of course, we want to be able to assess what is appropriate for us in our boundaries, and we want to stay in the space of a professional space. We also want to be able to understand when we're repairing relational trauma. However, our wisdom of insecurity is important, because if we don't have the wisdom to recognize that I may have some issues with relational trauma also, so this may not be something that I can do because I may interpret the relationship incorrectly. Right. And giving ourselves permission to understand that that's okay if I find challenges in that space. This is not an area for me. Or if, for the example I gave with myself, I had to realize, man, I think I do have a challenge with doing tapping for my client, right? And asking myself, well, what is it that you feel challenged with? Are you nervous that they'll feel uncomfortable with you? What are you most nervous with? Well, I'm nervous. I had to identify. I think I'm nervous that I'm still figuring it out. I couldn't answer clearly with y'all right now, right? And so it's being able to identify what is making me nervous. I think some of it too makes me wonder, are they okay with being touched? Because oftentimes, according to the trauma that we've experienced, we're trying to figure out, are you okay with being touched? And yes, a client, people, we can easily say, well, you can just ask them. Well, it's not that simple with someone who's experienced sexual trauma. They may say yes because they're also dealing with relational trauma. So they want to be able to experience you tapping for them because they want your approval, right? And so that goes back into our level of attunement and being able to say, what do you feel most comfortable with? Are you comfortable with me tapping your needs for you? And they may say yes, but if I see a rigid body language, then it's okay for me to say, well, it's okay if you're not. You can tap for yourself, or you can tap your feet, or I can give you these tappers and you can put them under your legs. And so you could do that on your own. Right. So then I'm staying attuned with them because I'm recognizing, especially in this form of therapy, that you can get a lot of yeses because of people's desire for approval. Okay. Ability to be playful, accepting, empathetic, and curious. PACE is something developed by, and I didn't put his name in there, but PACE is a method developed by a young man. And it reminds us to be playful, accepting, empathetic, and curious. This teaches our clients that it's okay to experience all of these things. We want to be courageous as therapists and comfortable with strong affect and have the wisdom of insecurity. Recognizing that, and that's a whole book if you guys want to get it. It's by Alan. I can't, it's Alan. It's on one of my slides, but I don't see it, y'all. But it's called The Wisdom of Insecurity. And it's a very good book because when I have wisdom related to my insecurities, then it allows me to show up in an authentic way. EMDR is a very vulnerable type of work. And when we have set the intention of helping our clients through their healing processes through EMDR, we want to make sure that we are doing our work. Because in doing our work, we're able to show up better for them. Be able to manage your own countertransference, right? And then having a knowledge of healthy child development is so important. Because then when I'm resourcing them, I'm able to help them do their parts work. I'm able to take them to these spaces. I'm able to give them permission to use the imagination they may have not known even existed because their childhood was so disrupted. Right? I'm letting them recreate idealized parents, grandparents, situations, lives, allowing them to understand that we can resource your body in a way that allows you to stay present, that is not hypnosis, that is teaching you how to rewire your brain so that you can function in an adaptive way in your current life experience. Okay, guys? So that's everything I got. I posted this last picture and left these two things on there. Ability to be playful, accepting, empathetic and curious. Ability to be courageous, comfortable with strong affect, and have the wisdom of insecurity. This is a powerful picture because I feel like when I'm older, I want to have the freedom to laugh, to be secure in myself. And when I'm in my present, I want to find the security so that when I'm in the space of my clients, I can help them to repair their attachment. And oftentimes, you guys, when we've dealt with our own attachment issues, as we're helping them to repair, we continue to repair. All right. And so I hope that was helpful for you all. If you have any questions, I think I saw a question come up. Kate Smith, I want to be training EMDR, but I have a client now that says she was very traumatized by the method, although it did bring her subconscious trauma to the service. Yeah, Kate, that I can see how that could happen. I would wonder what traumatized her about the method, right? But I do believe that sometimes the very things that we discussed are the things that impact people experiencing a level of being traumatized from EMDR. If we are not attuned to our clients, if we are not taking the necessary steps to assess their level of readiness, then these things can happen. But I would want to know more about her experience, with it, with trauma. Speaking of trauma, thank you, Judy. Yes, thank you for expressing that, because there are so many great resources. You don't have to go all the way into the whole levels of EMDR. Thank you for expressing. Where's Judy? Oh, I'm looking at you, Leanne. I forgot Judy is not on the screen. Okay. Then it says, yes, I believe it was not handled correctly, instructor. Yeah. It's according to how you experience. And I hope that she will go back and maybe she can work through that in EMDR, what traumatized her. And I always give my clients permission to interview your therapist, you know, assess if you're comfortable with your therapist. Recognize that you don't have to stay if you don't feel comfortable. And you don't have to have the language to explain why you don't feel comfortable, because not all the time will you have it, right? And so it's self-determination to be able to say for yourself, I am not comfortable, and it's not my responsibility to help them feel comfortable with my discomfort. Okay. Any other questions? Any other feedback? No. Was it helpful? Was the information provided helpful? I know I didn't go into the protocol and everything. I didn't go into the protocol and everything here. Thank you. I just kind of went into the attachment spaces. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything for you guys. Good. Oh, good. Okay. So I'm glad it's helpful for you guys. I want to make sure that I'm not talking too fast, because I try to condense things, because I'm a talker, so we can get it all in the hour. Okay. So let me see if my brother.
Hi, this is not Choya, but this is his lovely wife.
I've completed. I don't know if he wanted me to end or if he has anything else that he wants to share.
I am actually closing out for him. He had another meeting.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you, Juliet, for such an awesome presentation. As always, we appreciate you. You got some great feedback in the chat, so it seems like the audience was pleased with your presentation. So thank you for that. Again, I'm not Choya Wise, you all, so I did not hack his Zoom account, but he did put me on duty to close out. He had another meeting that he needed to attend. But I just wanted to thank you all for joining, and he wanted me to reassure you all that your CEUs will be coming out by the end of this week. That is one of my roles here at Aspire, so I will make sure that that happens for you all. And again, thank you all for coming, and until next time, you all have a great evening. Good night.
Good night.